Hi, I'm Lauren LaBruna. Welcome to Erupt. Today, I am joined by State Senator Susan Rubio. Thank you so much for being here today. You represent the 22nd District here in LA County, and we're so excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Lauren. Of course, it's an honor to be here.
So, of course, we want to get into the most pressing issues, but first, I want our Erupters to be able to get to know you. So you were born in Mexico and came to the U.S. when you were young, and then suddenly were sent back to Mexico. How did that experience shape you?
Well, I think that's the basis of everything that I do. I was a teacher for 17 years, and so I always have those moments very present in my mind. Of course, as an educator, I had to be very sensitive to the population I serve, which was a lot of second language learners, a lot of immigrant families. So I think it helped me tremendously to be able to understand what they were going through.
And I have to bring up your sister as well. Blanca is also a California state legislator. Do you have a rivalry? Do you see eye to eye on the issues? What's harder to resolve, political differences or family differences?
You know, interestingly enough, we don't necessarily have differences. I think the one thing that we learned to do early on was respect each other's roles. So we don't necessarily treat each other as sisters, even though that's a benefit. We look out for each other, we support each other. But in so many ways, we sometimes forget to share, consult where we are on some issues, and we end up voting differently. So as much as we are alike, we're different, but we do respect each other in terms of our roles. She's an assembly member, I'm a senator. We're not in the same house, so I think that's also a benefit. But we're able to support each other and really be rooting for one another to ensure that we're successful.
Yeah, that's awesome. And always so important with the family. Let's get into the issues of California, where you're a state senator. California is obviously a beautiful state, but has a multitude of issues, including homelessness, lack of affordable housing, energy, and climate, to name a few. In your opinion, what are the top priorities you have for the state of California?
Well, a lot of the times my priorities are rooted on what I see on the ground here in my district. And so let me just go back to when I started campaigning for state senate. I did knock on a lot of doors. I spoke to a lot of constituents, and I wanted to see what their priorities were. And in general, top three things stood out. Number one was the housing and homelessness. That was an issue that so many of my constituents shared. And that's the first thing I did as a senator. I started with creating a policy to help tackle that issue specifically in the San Gabriel Valley. So I created this very thinking out of the box, innovative program that helped our cities collaborate and come together to solve the issue. I was also a former council member, so I know how difficult it was for us to solve the issue as a small city with the limited resources we had. So the program that I brought to the district is now looking into building 1,000 housing units that will house approximately 4,000 people, which is incredible for our district. And I was able to support it with $25 million. And so right now it's in progress. And so I'm very proud that I was able to fulfill that need. And of course, the need continued and it's never over. But I think my constituents can be at least encouraged by the progress they see in this particular area. And the second issue I saw was education. That's always something that I think we can never do enough in. I saw the challenges as a teacher, and I also saw those challenges as a council member in my own city.
Right.
And so
I want to bring that up as well, because you mentioned your background in teaching. You were a public school teacher for 17 years and you were elected official for 13 years, and you bring up education as one of your main issues. What do you think is the key moves to bettering education, especially in the state of California?
Well, I have to say, we're very proud of the progress we've made this last year. We had one of the biggest investments ever, and that is on K through 12 education. And so I think that we're going to start seeing the results of that investment. We also, for the first time ever, we have universal meals in our schools. I know as a teacher, and many teachers listening out there, I found myself buying food for my students because I didn't want them to go hungry. And so that's something we can be very proud of, as well as universal TK, which is another issue that I dealt with. I was an elementary school teacher. So by way of example, you can see when someone had gone to school and someone showed up, let's say in first grade, a child couldn't even hold a pencil. Well, a more affluent household was already reading at a second grade level. So that will help, definitely level the playing field and help the most disadvantaged children succeed.
Right. And I want to bring up another topic of immigration. No doubt that is an issue near and dear to your heart. There's a bipartisan consensus that the immigration system in this country needs some work. So what do you think California and the U.S. as a whole should be doing to change things?
Well, the reality is that this is an issue that's pressing to, I believe, all of my colleagues in the legislature. I think it's an issue that we need to really put focus on. The interesting part is that we see this issue of immigration and immigration reform as a Democrat issue, but I've toured up and down the state, in particular in the Central Valley, where we have a lot of farm workers. And so many of my Republican friends and colleagues know how important the workforce is that they have in the Central Valley that put food on our table. So everyone wants to see progress in this respect. And so we're trying to work with the federal government, but once again, we have to let our president lead in that respect. And hopefully this year we can get something done.
Right. And continuing along the hot topics that we're discussing today is health. And health has been a main focus for so many people in this prolonging year and a half of COVID-19. What are your thoughts on the way that this state, California, has handled COVID-19? And are you thinking that there are some measures that should be improved on?
Well, let me just start by saying that this is something no one ever anticipated. It's something no one ever thought would happen. And we don't have a playbook. But I can just point to the fact that we have the lowest transmission in the country. So to me, that's an indication of how well we've done, at least in California. And we need to continue to engage people. We need to continue to educate. I know that there's a little bit of hesitancy on the vaccination side, but we're doing tremendously well compared to other states. And, I think we'll continue to keep pushing, make sure that people are healthy and continue to try to respect, how they feel personally, but getting them to the point that they feel confident enough that vaccines work.
Right. And a topic I want to bring up is something that I know is important to you. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and you are the chair of the Senate Select Committee on Domestic Violence. So just to begin there, what do you believe is really important for our viewers to know about domestic violence?
Well, not only do I want people to know, but I would like to highlight two really important bills that I passed that I think sometimes it takes a while to get to our folks that really need it. Number one, I was able to pass a bill that now defines domestic violence in a different way. And before we think of domestic violence as physical assault, a broken bone, a black eye, and my bill now includes coercive control as supporting evidence in court. And that means anything else that a perpetrator does by manipulating someone, taking their finances away, maxing out their credit cards, all the psychological abuse that victims face, in my opinion, before it gets to the physical assault. So when you ask me, what do I want people to know? I want them to know that they shouldn't always look for the physical abuse. I always talk to parents in schools and I always ask, please don't ask, are you being assaulted? Always ask, is your boyfriend coercing you into doing something you don't want to do? From the choosing your friends, isolating you from your family, taking your phone away. That is how we need to start thinking about abuse. It's not just when it gets to the physical assault, it's everything that happens before that leads to the physical assault.
Right. And for other people that may be passionate about domestic violence awareness and want to get involved, what ways do you recommend?
Well, there's so many of our DV shelters right now that need the help. COVID has made it very difficult. A lot of them function with volunteers. And so please call your local shelter. See if you can not only participate as a volunteer, but if you have the means, please support them financially. Right now, they're struggling. And lastly, I want to say a bill that I also passed right now, which is critical to victims, is remote testimony. The last bill that the governor signed will allow victims to submit testimony remotely. They don't have to show up to court to face their abusers, which is the hardest thing for a victim to do. And that's why sometimes they recant or don't show up in court. So now you could file a restraining order remotely and also submit testimony remotely. Unfortunately, the court's asking for a little bit of time to implement, so it will become effective 2023. So hopefully that will help our victims out there.
Well, we thank you, State Senator Susan Rubio, for joining us today and for doing all the wonderful work you're doing, especially in terms of domestic violence awareness. And I hope to have you back again soon.
Thank you so much. And I hope you all enjoy your day today. Thank you for having me.
Hi, I'm LaBruna, and I just wrapped up an interview with California State Senator Susan Rubio. She spoke a lot about domestic violence and what she sees for the future of California. If you like this conversation, make sure to subscribe below.